Hello and welcome to Mr. Clark After Dark, everyone. My name is Lucas Clark and I am a certified educator with Alberta Education and the Alberta Teachers Association. All conversations and interactions exchanged is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. In no way does the content discussed intend to be in violation of the ATA Code of Conduct or meant to target any individual student, teacher, or to belittle the profession in any way. If you have something that you would like me to discuss or have a story of your own to share, please reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com. You can also send a direct message on Instagram at Mr. Clark After Dark. Hope you enjoy the show, and please do not forget to subscribe. My guest here today was Hilary Morgan, a dear friend of mine here at Cole McTavish. Some of the main things we discussed were how to make marketing more efficient, the pros and cons of standardized assessment, the transition from a small rural indigenous school into a bigger McTavish school and what that transition has been like, and a few other things along the way about how she is also not from Cape Breton. Very strange to learn that from her. Hope you all enjoy.
Tyler, just calm down. It's gonna be okay.
Well, this is Morgan.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on.
Of course. I'm so excited for this. There's not enough. I don't think there is any Canadian teaching podcasts.
I haven't found any, but
Yeah.
I found one. There was like teachers who drink. I was like, okay, well, we're in the school, so maybe we should.
Teachers who drink coffee.
Yeah,
I'm one of
that's
those.
true. That's true. So,
Yeah.
how has where did you grow up?
I grew up in Cape Breton.
Okay.
Yeah. Moved from Calgary to Cape Breton when I was like 7.
Okay.
Really small school district.
You lived in Calgary, then moved to Cape Breton.
This is something I hate to admit. I was born in Calgary, yeah. Born in Calgary, lived in Okotoks for like my first 4 years. Family bounced back and forth between Calgary and the East Coast, and then finally we're like, want to raise our family on the East Coast. So I was in grade 2 when I started in Cape Breton. I'm like an honorary member.
What?
The Order of Cape Breton.
So
I
you're
know.
a mainlander, okay.
I'm a mainlander, and I just get a lot of hate for it. Yep.
So,
yeah.
Well, I guess like my question is, because I'm from Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And I've always been like the education back there just gets like trash talked so hard.
I know.
Like my parents always talk about it. When my brother moved here, he was the only one who was in school, and he was 7. So I think he was going into grade 2, and then like in Newfoundland, he was just crushing his classes. Top academic.
Yeah.
Moves here, they're like, oh, we're putting you into the KNE program, or like that comparison, the relative one, and then so it was just like it was misleading. So I guess I'm kind of wondering, if you grew up there, how is kind of the intensity different from how you went in high school and what you learned in high school versus what you're teaching now?
I think the big thing with high school, I remember, I had a lot of, I should remember this term, it's from my BEd program, like a lot of social capital, I think. Social capital, cultural capital? I think it's cultural capital. Like, okay. I knew how to do school because my mom was a high school teacher, and she knew the lingo and the ins and outs, and I didn't have, my academic struggles were in math, but she knew the tutors to connect me to. Like, I thought the rigor of our high school was pretty standard in terms of, there was a high expectation set on us no matter what program you were in. In Nova Scotia, we had streaming, sort of. Like, there was advanced English, there was academic English.
Pure or something?
Yeah, we called it, okay, and I think there's some provinces that called it pure. We called it advanced academic, and then like communications or essentials. Yeah. So the KNE program in Alberta would be the communications or essentials program in Nova Scotia. Academic stream, I guess, would be your -2 equivalent, and then your advanced stream was like your -1. There was some schools that had IB, but the expectation of IHOuse was that you do the IB is International Baccalaureate or something like that. Like Baccalaureate. It's a term.
Yes.
That only one school around where I went to school offered it, but it was not.
More intelligent.
Yeah, it just sounded like a lot more work, honestly, to me. So I was like, both my parents had expectations for me, but my school was very much like, you didn't really know what stream you were in, kind of thing.
It's like, you're there.
You're there.
We see.
And I know that there was a lot of less pressure on teachers in terms of curriculum, because we had provincial assessments that we didn't call diplomas. I think we just called them provincial exams in my core classes. And I was the last class, like when I graduated from high school in 2010, that was the last year that they used them for a percentage of our grade.
This is like a formative provincial exam.
It was just taking a temperature of the province. So I think sometimes in Alberta educational circles, we like to tell ourselves that we need a diploma so that we're making sure our kids are getting the same education in Anzac and in downtown Calgary and having some sort of measure of success. But you don't have to attach a really high grade to that in order to get that. So that's the main difference that I had growing up was I had this assessment. It was a big deal. I took my exams seriously, but it was not an exam that was worth, I think in 2010 in Alberta, that exam was worth 50% of a kid's grade being determined on one day. 2 days of the humanities. So that's the main difference is there was not this developmental focus in grade 10, 11, 12 about here's how you have to start writing for this eventual diploma. There was a lot more creativity and flexibility that teachers had to just teach us content in a different way and not have this looming provincial assessment over them. But I don't remember feeling unprepared when I went to university. I know the intensity was a lot greater, but I don't remember thinking, oh, I never learned this at high school. Or I did not feel academically unprepared. And my peers that were in university with me that came from Ontario or Alberta who had these assessments didn't have an advantage on me. Like I didn't remember feeling that at all. So I felt like the rigor at the time for me in Nova Scotia with the education I got was on par.
And you graduated high school what year?
2010.
2010.
So I'm old.
Well, yeah, because even as you say that, I kind of didn't even realize that's what I've been doing. So obviously my diploma marking bout where you're just hammered with the same type of essay for 6 days. Now that after that, I'm teaching grade 10 as like, okay, now we're in a 3-year preparation for this one exam.
Exactly.
And so how much does that limit you and limit the students for what you can actually do? Because, and you know what, it's obviously like you're going to get some top-down pressure to be successful on those exams, but how much is that really necessary? How much do you learn when you're mostly just focused on how to write a test versus how to actually learn?
Yeah, I think that's the balance of being any diploma teacher in any subject is the pressure that you have to teach to the test. That I feel a lot, like I've been doing English 30 for 6 years now. I feel a lot of that pressure still, and I feel like it does kind of limit the creative styles of writing that I might want to teach students, or the kinds of texts that I might want to expose my students to. Like critically analyzing like a documentary and learning about bias in just a documentary style of text is not a text they're going to see on that diploma. So I don't quote unquote waste my time with a text that's not going to help them eventually on a diploma. In terms of writing, I like most of the writing assignments on the English 30-1 and 2 diploma. I think you should be able to write a persuasive letter in order to appeal to a local business or to a city council. I think that's incredibly important.
So what are the main writing assignments in English?
So English 30-1, you have your critical essay. So that is when you're choosing a character from a text that you've read, from all the texts that you've read all semester, and applying that character to the prompt, answering the prompt using that character. So the questions are usually, I think the one I'm doing for Gatsby right now is the tension between reality and idealism, and taking a character and talking about like, how does this person have that situation go on in their lives? So it's a prompt, and you pick a character and respond to that prompt using a character. And then the second style of writing in 30-1 is the personal response to text. They get a short story, a poem, and a visual, and they have to write either a creative response about the ideas and impressions they're getting, like a journal entry or a short story or a rant, or they write kind of a hybrid. I've had some great rants about like, this philosophical nugget came out from these readings, and here's how I feel about it. I've had
you're trying to apply, essentially learning how to write a thesis if you take that overall theme from all your text, absolutely. Yeah, and it allows for some personal response. The other option for their writing is they can write about an experience they've had that relates to the texts.
And that's 30-1 style of writing. 30-2 is very similar. The only addition is that they have that persuasive piece. But I think a persuasive style of writing belongs in all levels. Like you should be able to communicate your opinion in a respectful but forward manner in tons of different areas in your life. So those writing styles, because they're so regimented, I don't find there's a ton of flexibility with what I'm able to do, because I constantly am thinking, is this a text they can use on the diploma instead of, is this a text that's going to broaden their understanding of essay writing? So this might just be a reflection on me as a teacher that's not 10 years into this yet, that I'm still, I hold the diploma with such high regard, because I know so many students are so stressed about it, and I want to give them the best opportunity for success. So I'm choosing lessons and strategies and ideas that are going to help them on the diploma, not maybe help them become better readers and writers for the rest of their lives.
Well, even as someone like teaching diploma courses, it's always, oh, the results are not on you, but we're definitely going to be taking them into consideration. Like,
I know, it's so tricky. It's so tricky.
It's like, they don't matter, but do well. Like,
they don't matter, but please, you have to do well.
Or you'll be fine.
Can you? And that's the thing. We're so lucky. Like our counterparts in the United States, and that's why I'm so glad we're getting some more Canadian teaching podcast perspectives. Like our salary is not tied to our standardized testing results the way that our counterparts in the United States are. So in terms of pressure, like this is a walk in the park to what they're, I guess, like we're comparing to. But in terms of professional pressure, and it comes from me. It's from me. It's no one else. I'm just like, here's this test. I'm going to teach you. Like I take it as a challenge of like, I want to teach them every strategy to deconstruct the questions, to show them that this is like, to show them all the foolproof ways you can answer these questions. Not let's appreciate the text for what it is, and let's notice what the writer did here, and why did they start with this style of writing, and how do they transition into this. I'm like losing the like love and excitement for that by grade 12. Like grade 10 and 11 is here's how to do it. Grade 12 is June 12th is coming up. Let's get ready. June 12th is like
that we are
in my mind at all times. Which again, maybe I should maybe that'll come with time, that I'll like start to care about this less and have a different approach. But so far my approach has been get them ready for this thing.
Yeah, well, and even for the teacher pressure, because it seems like every time I'll go talk to a veteran teacher or someone else, and I'll say, oh, I'm so stressed. Then they're like, whoa, like, shut up. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And it's never actually the case that, like, no one else is actually physically or verbally putting pressure on you.
No.
It is kind of put on ourselves.
100%.
But, like, is there a way to go about teaching without and remove that pressure? Or how much of that pressure can be like, where's the pressure come from? Like, is it a personal pride?
I think the pressure comes from the weight of the exam. Like my first couple years of teaching, it was 30%. So part A is 15, part B is 15. And because of COVID, they made some adjustments to make it 20%. But last year the Department of Ed was like, it's going back up to 30. Then they made a last minute decision to keep it at 20. So either way, those big numbers. I mean, like in the grand scheme, this is still less than half of their grade on one day. But so much of my educational kind of philosophy is more about like, the school isn't everything for our kids, and we don't know what they're dealing with at home. And to say that on one day, this big proportion of your grade is going to be determined is grossly unfair in my like personal opinion. But my opinion doesn't matter when it comes to like, if I'm giving this course, I have to prepare them for it. So I think it's the number. I think when I see 20%, I see that this one exam is worth 10, the second exam is worth 10. I put pressure on myself to be like, well, I want that to be the best 20%. Then I'm going to prepare them,
that's true,
to get their best 20 on that day, instead of considering, well, what's the back end, the 80% that I have left is all preparation for that 20%. So
yes, that is true, because even like I kind of tailor all of my performance and formative assessments to be like, this is what could be on the diploma. But I guess kind of my flip concern would be if the diploma did not exist and I'm teaching my students, okay, we're going to almost the fact that there is a diploma almost gives them an incentive to do the work right now. And
True,
that's
they
kind
think
of
final
my-
exams do that though. Like,
Yeah.
we have outcomes, like we have curricular outcomes that we would have to follow with or without
Yeah, true.
a diploma.
Yeah.
And we could have final assessments that could be weighted at 10, 20, 30%, whatever it is. But that could be an assessment that is built on the texts or the material that you've done in the sense of your interpretation of those outcomes. Like in English,
Yeah, that's true.
there is no, the English program of studies, we're also testing students on their ability to listen and to speak. But there's no speaking and listening component to the diploma. So I used to love doing a podcast unit. I used Serial Season 1 in English 20 because I was hitting my speaking and listening outcomes by having students listen to a narrative, a true crime kind of situation, how that podcast was constructed, the bias within that story, and then have students orally present at the end kind of their persuasive opinion on who they think did it or what holes they found in, I forgot her name, Sarah Koenig's, I think, is the podcast host. The holes they found in her narrative structure. Like, I got so much more out of students with speaking and listening outcomes that's nowhere to be seen on the diploma. So we're not entirely testing students on every outcome on the diploma either. So I think using the diploma as this summative assessment that students have to do, that the Department of Education down in Edmonton creates, is so detached, and there's so much fear because they don't know what style of questions are coming, that I would just much rather have it be something that the school or the division can set, that we can still like tailor our exams to be,
I think, yeah. Well, because even if you have a diploma exam that's standardized, it almost assumes a standardized interpretation of what the curriculum is meant to achieve.
Yeah.
And whereas if you don't have that kind of, because I think the argument for having a standardized test is like, oh, if for example, if a teacher in some rural community is inflating their grades like crazy, obviously it can be unfair if you have a very rigorous, and even in the same rural community, if you have two different teachers with very different levels of rigor in their assessment, it could be the case where, okay, one will have a better chance of going to university now being accepted because their grades higher, but if those two teachers had to make that test for that school, then you're already kind of balancing that out at a more decentralized level.
Yeah, standardized tests offer like a lot of valuable data too, because I know like school boards, parents, other stakeholders want to see like the raw data of how is this school performing, how is this district performing. But I think the conversation around assessment can be more than a standardized test. And in 2023, I think there are other tools, especially with speaking and listening outcomes. I think to have our students be able to carry a conversation or to argue persuasively and respectfully. So much of what we've seen in the past couple of years with people's anger and outrage over COVID-19, people are always resorting to just derogatory, violent, racist, homophobic language and not getting to your point in a persuasive, logical way.
Yeah. And
we don't teach students how to do that on a diploma exam. Like, we're not teaching those skills to write a multiple choice.
Well, actually, when you said that, I think of, like, I listen to some comedians who will, in their podcast and interviews, they always say, I always realized I was using the F word too much. And it's like, the more I actually realized it, when I actually used more precise language instead of just using the F word every third word, it actually made myself a lot funnier. More funny. Compared to if you're just always using like the same kind of like racist or bigoted buzzwords. Yeah. Well, it's like you're not actually describing what you think you are describing. And that's kind of the, whereas then you can have a legitimate conversation of, okay, where am I wrong? Rather than this simple, big language that's like, you don't even really know what it means. So I guess it kind of goes into my second question, because most of the standardized testing for social and English, obviously it's half and half, multiple choice and written. Multiple choice is pretty standard. I mean, you have your qualms about it, but when it comes to diploma exam preparation or just writing in general, with ChatGPT and all of these resources of how you can like have these different websites that can write for you and etc., blah blah blah, how do you instill the importance of being a good writer in your students' lives, and like what would your argument be for how writing helps you in all aspects of your life?
Yeah, ChatGPT is killing me right now, and it's it's just too bad because I think there's so many opportunities for it to be helpful in the classroom, but my worry with it is that if we're just teaching students how to input the correct buzzwords so that it'll pump out a paragraph, they will become reliant on it and will use it as a crutch, and we will stop actually knowing how to go about this independently when you don't have that tool. So that's my little gripe with ChatGPT, but I think like there's so many opportunities for students to. I like the idea of them using it to show them an exemplar.
Yeah.
I don't have to write the exemplar myself. They could use it to, like, I think there's some awesome opportunities there. I think what a lot of students, and this is where the diploma comes back into this, that if students just think that writing is two styles of writing, the source analysis, the position paper.
That's true.
If students just think that English writing is just a PRT and a Carl, if they think that that is what writing is, and I acronym queen everything. Critical analytical response to literature is what it's called. I call it Carl.
Carl.
The Carl.
I love it.
Or the critical.
Nothing like a good acronym.
Nothing like, what is education if not just a series of acronyms that changes every couple of years?
Yes.
I
That's
think.
what education degrees are.
Oh my gosh. I think that those styles of writing, we are limited in our focus. Like, I like to try so hard to like use comedy in my class to be like, all comedians are writers. Like, look at the writer's strike right now in the United States. Every show that you watch, every late night television talk show host, oh my gosh, it's on podcast. Oh my gosh. Cut this all out.
Hey, Mr. Clark After Dark. Right?
I know that this is a motion sensor thing, but to me, it just says haunted.
Yeah.
To me, it is a ghost. I'm going to take a sip of coffee while we do that. I'll just restart. Why is writing important? Okay, we're back from the haunting.
Yes, exactly.
Why do I think writing is important? I think our diploma exams in all subjects just, unless you're really good at this, I've never read a PRT that is comedic, but I think we forget that like comedy relies so heavily on writing. I'm a huge fan of SNL and comedy in general, but if you're a comedian, you are writing your jokes and there's a structure to your writing. Every show that we watch, everything that we consume has writing behind it, and I think students forget that. So I try to, when we're doing the persuasive essay, try to liven it up a bit and be like, this isn't just a letter to a boring town council. Like, you can use comedy in these as well to prove your point. And I pull up those clips of surfer bros, those two in the United States, who go around to like different city councils in California, I think, asking for ridiculous demands. Like, at one point they'd show up to, I don't even know, it was Santa Monica or something, asking for a 9-foot statue of Paul Walker, which sounds like a ridiculous request, but the language they use, like all of the tools and strategies they are using to communicate their points, it's rhetoric. It's tools of rhetoric and persuasive writing. So I'll play these clips after I front-loaded what the tools of rhetoric are to the grade 12s. I'll play these clips, and I love watching their jaws drop because they're like, oh my gosh, they just used emotional appeal. Oh my gosh, they just used logic and reason. So I like showing them that to say like, okay, yes, are these guys going around trolling city councils? Yes, but the language that they're using, the strategies they're using for comedic effect are also persuasive strategies. I don't encourage them to go troll city council in Cape McMurray, but like it's a different way of showing them writing to be like, here's another way that you can be persuasive. You can be persuasive and hilarious.
Yes.
I think like silly writing assignments, like a lot of students don't know what a eulogy is, which is pretty intense and sad. But if you eulogize random everyday objects, like I used to have a writing assignment in grade 12 about or like eulogizing like a doorknob that broke, like all the times you helped me go from one place to another. I had a eulogy assignment where grade 12s had to like eulogize like one class that they absolutely hated in high school, and they had to be respectful. Like it's a eulogy, you have to be respectful. You can sneak in a couple days.
Even if you have that relative that like you hated and they died, and you're like, it sucks. You're like, you gotta be nice on that day.
You have to be nice on that day. So assignments that are more, I wish, and this is where I guess maybe it's my time management of planning the year. I feel like there's not enough time to teach those 2 writing assignments for the diploma, but I like to show students that writing doesn't have to just be this prescriptive. Paragraph 1 has to have this. Paragraph 2 has to have this. When you're analyzing an image, it needs to do this, this, and this. I like to show them and use podcasts and use comedy in my class to show them that writing is also a creative endeavor this way.
Yeah, because even it might sound to someone who is not a teacher to be like, oh, it's only 2 essays. Like, are they stupid? What are they doing? Are they just working 8 to 3? No.
Yeah.
And it is insane that even in social, like we have the source analysis, the assignment 1, and the position paper, the assignment 2. It's like, okay, those are 2 essays. But like the arc that goes into delivering, communicating, and trying to add, because the thing is, students do not care. There's 2 written assignments. It's like, they know, like, okay, they don't see the value in it beyond what this is going to give me beyond passing this course.
And what and how to, I think the care component is they care about the grade, they care about they care about the end result here.
Yes.
But I wish trying to bridge their understanding of this will help you either in a post-secondary program, or it will help you if you, I don't know, have a neighbor playing music too loud and you want to write a letter of bylaw. Like, it will, it's a skill that will help you into your future. It'll help you write safety reports. I have so many students that tell me they'll never need English again. A couple of years into their trade, they'll send me a nice little message being like, you have no idea how much writing there is at site.
It's great. It's like I warned you on purpose.
Honestly, and they're like, wow, you were sort of right, but it's a different style of writing. Like, that's informational writing. That there is nowhere, I can't think of a place in the English 30 curriculum where we were teaching students how to fill out safety reports. Which I guess would be a tailored experience for students depending on what they're doing. But there's so many other styles of writing that we are taking away or limiting when we just say that there's 2 styles of writing in social studies at the -1 level, and there's 2 styles of writing at the -1 level for English.
And the -2 is our dumpster fire. They're 3, I think, personally. But that kind of gets me to an interesting, I think it's an interesting question.
We'll see.
When they talk about like rewriting like the curriculum, it's like, okay, you kind of had to like reset English, and you were in charge of it, and you were like, okay, we're going to design an English course or an English stream for people who want to go into the trades. Like, kind of reconsidering the -2 stream for the more, maybe not the simple, but the more like concise, like even in a trade, they're not going to be writing 3,000 word papers. It's going to be the practical side of it. What kind of changes would you make, and like what do you think would be mandatory for, like, what aspects of writing are mandatory for everyone to know beyond just passing an English or social assignment in high school?
I think you got to keep that persuasive in there, the persuasive letter or speech, because there will come a time where they need to write a letter for something, a letter requesting a letter of reference. Maybe they're writing a letter of reference. I think the persuasive piece has to stay. I think we should do and help a lot more than we do with the comm curriculum for students to be writing cover letters and resumes in a more effective way. I think maybe like safety reports, informational kind of writing would be helpful for that stream if it were to exist. But also, I think interpersonal communication, like, I can't think of a lot of courses where we're helping students write emails to colleagues or to your boss to communicate information, to ask questions, how to do so in a respectful but engaging way. Conflict resolution in terms of like that speaking and listening thing, coming back to those are outcomes in the English curriculum that we kind of, I think a lot of teachers just go, well, we have class discussions, that's my speaking and listening outcome. But like, where's the evidence? I mean, where's the rubric that shows how are they communicating effectively? What does communicating effectively look like? And respectfully look like? I think some sort of communication aspect to that course could be helpful, not just at a course for students going into the trades, but this is something that goes all the way up to our kids in 30-1, that if you're emailing me to ask for an extension, the email has to go in the body of the email. Don't ask me the question in the subject line. Like, if you want to come off professionally to your future professors.
Like, yo, Mr. Clark, I need me. I'm like,
whoa. Whoa. So I think, interpersonal communication. And again, so much of our students' living lives is not going to be about just writing essays. Like, communication and writing only goes so far. We need to, that speaking and listening outcome is something I've been thinking about so much lately. Every outcome of the 5 general outcomes, the preamble to the outcome says that students will, listen, read, write, create something in response to this outcome. But our listening and speaking part, I don't know how we're testing that and measuring that when they get to an exam. So that's what I think for the trade courses. I would have some of their, and maybe I'm missing something with the trades. I don't know much about the trades in terms of the programs at places like Keano or Nate's, but what kind of written components they need. Other than the safety logs or safety reports, I think of even my brother. He's a geological engineer, and I see the reports he has to fill out when he goes on site visits sometimes, and I'm like, I don't know where you would learn that skill, basically, other than being taught in university. So
and even for, I find like a lot of our students, because I mean we're never going to be dealing with anyone older than 17 or 18 for the most part in our schools. And for me, I find it's like, okay, most of our students have this idea that within 2 to 4 years I'll have my trade complete and I'll start my trade. But there's never any consideration of, okay, how about when you're 5 years into your trade and you want to be the team lead?
Yeah.
It's like if you have no communication abilities, that's all listening, reading, and speaking.
Yeah.
When you are delivering messages through the chain of command to your people, and you're delivering, these are the expectations, this is why we have these expectations. And then when you're the team lead, let's just say your buddy who you've worked with for 5 years now wants to be team lead. And whether or not they become team lead depends on how well you are able to persuade people to hire them.
Exactly,
so that's what like writing almost becomes something that's not about you.
Yeah.
After a while, it's about like, how do you actually get your message out there?
Get your message out there, achieve a goal, win an argument, like any of those things. I think more persuasive writing would be great in high school, and showing students that having an opinion doesn't mean you have to degrade someone. Having an opinion doesn't mean you have to call people heinous names. Like you don't have to. I think our House of Commons question period would just be a much more lovely experience for all if they could communicate without using insults.
You're here.
Get it done. Come on over to my English class and I will teach you.
And so I'm kind of tying back to an earlier point here because I did not teach during COVID. I subbed during COVID for 2 years. But in terms of actually, so you taught at Northlands?
Northland School Division number 61. And
that is in Anzac, Alberta. Right?
Yeah, so real quick, super interesting fact about the school division is that it is, like, geographically, the landmass that the school district covers is bigger than the UK. It is huge. It's huge. The entire north, east, and western corners of Alberta is predominantly Northland School Division. Just geographically. Okay, wow. In terms of student population, though, it's like, I think around 2,000 or 2,500 students.
Wow.
Super rural.
Wow.
Very geographically isolated locations, like a couple fly-in, fly-out communities.
Yeah.
So that I was with Northland for 5 years and was in Anzac. That was one of the more like urban locations because it's 45 minutes southeast of Fort McMurray. But we had I think 250 students K to 12. Little school across the street was like K to 5, and then 6 to 12 was at the big school, the Woodward.
Big school.
Yeah, the big school. So just a completely different ballgame there when you're talking about I've night and day experiences with being in Fort McMurray's biggest school in terms of population now. We almost have as many students in this one school that Northland has across a geographical landmass as has the UK. It is wild. Teaching style and teaching conditions and teaching mentality is just completely different in a rural school district.
So you've taught English 10, 20, and 30?
It was grade 7 to 12. You're kind of stuck with me. But we got a couple years in. I started picking up kind of more options courses that I was interested in teaching, and I dropped grade 7 English, and then I think it was grade 9 to 12 English at the end. But it was, you kind of were I was the only English teacher for a while for grade 7 to 12. The bio teacher, our bio math department was 2 people. Our social, we had 1 person doing social grade 7 to 12. You were your department. Essentially,
So now that you come to McTavish, which is one school in Fort McMurray, and we have almost 1,500 students just in our school.
Yeah.
obviously, kind of like getting deeper into the standardized testing kind of narrative here, you've also taught the same course at McTavish and at Northland.
Mhm.
How is the preparation different for going into those two different kinds of environments?
So in my school, and this might be different.
Meaning Northland?
Anzac, sorry. In Bill Woodward School, when I was with Northland, this might be different for some Northland schools, but for the most part, our courses were combined. So your Dash 1 and 2 were in one room.
Okay.
Which sounds overwhelming, but there's only 10 to 12 students at the high school level. So we lost a lot of students along the way in high school to different schools. A lot of kids would come into town, different family arrangements, they'd move, or do school through like an outreach program like ADLC or Career Pathways. So our junior high numbers were usually about like 20 kids, and then they would like peter off as the years went on. High school completion was a challenge for some students. It wasn't a high percentage of our students that were not completing. I don't think. It was just other choices along the way. So the difference for us was you had a 30-1 and 2 class combined. So usually what that meant was we had a higher percentage of Dash 2 students than Dash 1.
Okay.
So you were choosing texts that could work for both, that were accessible to a Dash 2 reading level, but had enough, I guess, substance there for the Dash 1 reading assignment or writing assignments. So you were always kind of creatively trying to choose texts that hit the program of studies, making sure that you're doing that. But it could get kind of tricky, like making Shakespeare's requirements in 30-1, not a requirement in Dash 2, but I would have to do it. And try to use things like graphic novels or No Fear, using films, breaking things up, not doing every single scene, but doing the soliloquy analysis of key moments so that students knew how to read and deconstruct a Shakespearean text when they saw it on the diploma, because they will get a Shakespearean excerpt that they'll have to answer questions to, but also not wasting the Dash 2 time with something they're never going to see. So always trying to strike that balance, I found really difficult. And when you're the only English teacher in your building, you would kind of go across the hallway and you couldn't. I had incredible colleagues. Like we're really tight in terms of like interpersonal relationships. Like we're all around the same age. A lot of us started our careers with Northland, so we had so much opportunity to connect and to help students, more broad-based. But if it was like a specific curriculum-based struggle that I had, I kind of didn't know who to turn to sometimes. Whereas in McTavish, we have 4 other teachers in the English department, and I could just go, and they've taught this course for years in many other different urban contexts, and they would have a wealth of resources or another strategy that I could pick up right away. I didn't have to think of, okay, who else in Northland might be out there that's teaching this? Who can I email? I found that kind of tricky. I found that could be really isolating when you're trying to get better as an English teacher. You were like, how do I do that if I feel like I'm alone? And because of that, like we didn't get our diploma results usually. Our sample size was always considered too small for that big breakdown. Like we'd get the breakdown, you'd get your results, but only like the level of results that we were getting with the day that we were going through, based on like question by question breakdown, I never saw those. Maybe it was just a miscommunication from Northland, but I remember being told that it was because we only had 10 kids writing this thing, and we didn't get this detailed breakdown. Maybe we didn't. I just remember not seeing a question by question breakdown, which would be so helpful if I'm struggling teaching students poetry comp, and my results show that, I should change things up. But I think that was the biggest difference, is that in smaller school divisions, you have a lot more freedom and flexibility, which I loved. Like you could be so creative. A lot of school divisions that are really rural like that, like Northland was really supportive and being like, oh, you have this idea? Do it. Yes, go, run with this. If you're engaging our students and helping them, attendance was a huge focus. If you're getting kids in the door and engaged, that's what our goal is right now, not diploma results. That is definitely like something we'd like to see, but I had a lot more freedom and creativity, and a lot of like the community in the school really felt like a very small knit family. So you had support. I wasn't like by myself at all. But in terms of like disciplinary stuff, when it was my discipline of English, I kind of felt sometimes like I don't know if what I'm doing is working, and I want to change things up, but I don't know how. And then coming here, having a huge department and so many teams, like so much of what rural teachers have to do is being everything all at once. You are the resource support person. You are sometimes a wellness or guidance counselor. Sometimes you are doing career programming with students. You're all these things for kids all the time. And then when you come to a big school, you have like very designated specialized departments and student services and in resource that sort of supports just come with population that you're not necessarily going to get. But it was a good place to like cut your teeth because you had to just work really hard to like carve your own program.
You had so many roles to fill. You really
There's so much more autonomy. Like you could, not to say that in a big school you don't, but there was a lot more freedom for me to just pick books that I thought would really, like when you know the kids that well, you pick books that you think the kids would engage with. Okay,
so in your situation, primarily Indigenous population?
Yeah, I think Northland's school division as a whole, it's like 80% to 90% of our population was Indigenous. So in Anzac, I had students from all backgrounds, but primarily Cree, Dene, and Métis.
And so in selecting or even creating activities for English, like what are some that kind of stick out as ones you're like, oh, like that worked? The kids really enjoyed that one. Are there any that come to mind?
That's Serial Season 1 podcast.
Okay. That's Serial Killer?
Yeah, so it's called, the series is called Serial, but it's about the case of Adnan Syed. No, not at all. No, it's about Adnan Syed. He was, I think, like 17, 1999 in Baltimore, and was accused for the murder of his ex-girlfriends. Okay. And it's all circumstantial evidence. There's not a single piece of physical evidence that tied him to this murder, but it was about how these lawyers crafted the story and how they sold the story to their jurors. So
you can go a lot of different ways.
Oh my gosh, the series is incredible. It was one of the first. It was when like true crime podcasts were relatively new. This is the one that like kicked off that obsession. It's not graphic. It's not gory. It's not one of those.
What do you think of the position paper? You could probably like have that as a precursor to be like, hey, you could definitely. Someone was like put away.
He just. Oh my goodness, we're back to this. We're back. He was just released. I forget I don't know what the legal jargon is. At the hand. There we go. Talking about murder then. And I forget. I don't know the legal situation, but I know that he was just released. Like he was in prison from 1999 until 2023. And when he was released, students that I taught on this podcast for like years ago were emailing me still these articles being like, Miss, like Adnan was released, and I think it's because of like they remembered it. And there was so much like passionate debate about what side students were on that if a student is emailing you years after you taught them something,
and about
you're
content,
like, oh my gosh, that they're still following this, or that it opened a new branch of interest for them is like, that's the biggest reward. So that was an activity or a unit that I was trying to hit those speaking and listening outcomes on top of everything else in English, and I had a lot of success with that. In a smaller school, I remember in Northland, one thing I liked to do, it was called book dates. Very Pinteresty thing to do, but I don't know how you could do this at a big school because it's such a small school. You set up your room as like a little French restaurant, a little bistro. I brought in like sparkling apple juice. I made like a charcuterie board for my class, and then they had to go. The novels that were selected that I thought were at grade level, at student interest. Always try to incorporate Indigenous authors. Not only because of my student population, but you have that Canadian author outcome as well. So there'd be like 4 or 5 choices for a novel at each table. Students would go to each table, sip on their little sparkling cider, read the front and back of the book, scan through it, do an MLA citation for the book, learn how to do that.
What's a citation?
Oh my goodness. Learn how to do that. They'd rotate at these stations, and at the end, they'd make their power rankings of like, I want this book as number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And because it was such a small school, students always got their first choice. And when you're giving students choice in the books that we'd like them to read, way more engagement, way more interest. So telling them we have to do Lord of the Flies, why not find something that has the same.
We're listening to this audiobook every day, and you're gonna love it.
You're gonna have to love it. And it was easier to do budget-wise because it was a small class. These books, I only needed 2 or 3 copies of each. It would be really difficult in a class of 37.
How would you, I'm trying to think, because obviously there is a variety of what you can go into in the 30-1
Yeah.
section. Have you, or would you, and how could you think, kind of have a system like that where they could choose their texts?
I think it would be like a department, kind of like, this is the thing about English, is that the last time we had an approved resource list, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alberta teachers, was 2004. And those were the books where they said, like, in 20-1, here's the approved books.
Yeah.
In 20-2, here's the approved books.
So
like they stopped.
Still,
Yeah.
Like 1984.
Yeah, and like, no offense to those books, but like, again, as someone who loves Lord of the Flies, like, I do genuinely love that book. There is so much more out there. There are new, more modern, more diverse, compelling stories that can deliver the same thing, that our students can still get characterization and change, and they can still pull theme and motif and symbolism out of. We can still critically analyze other texts that aren't written in the 1940s. So the process that I took in ANZAC basically was based on my students' interests, based on the curriculum requirements for Canadian content, based on kind of appropriateness, what I thought I would create this list of books and go to by admin. And if there was something risque, we would send a parent letter home. So the book Beartown by Frederick Bachman is something I think is a perfect grade 12 text. I've had so many students be successful on 30-1 and 2 diploma. It is about, I guess, it's very close to the plot of like 13 Reasons Why with sports culture, the entitlements of athletes sometimes. There is sexual assault featured in the book. It's not graphic, but there are some graphic locker room dialogue conversations that I was like, ooh, this could be controversial. Like, we all know books are under attack right now in the United States. Like, don't want to be that teacher, but sent home a letter explaining that, but also explaining what outcomes I think it attaches to and why I think the students would agree to it. And 99% of my parents in ANZAC, because I was so embedded in that community and so small, were like, we trust you. Like, whatever, you do you. You're getting my child to like read a book. That cool. What? And it was incredible. I had a lot of students that even said, like, I don't want to read a book about hockey. I had a lot of basketball boys out there. They're like, I don't want to do this. And they gave it a shot. And at the end, I've never had a student that said that book wasn't impactful or that book wasn't helpful for them on the diploma. So that's what I mean about creativity. I had a lot more, like, there's a lot more work on me to go find those books, to be taking PD, to listen to what other teachers in Alberta were talking about, and compiling lists myself and then going to find the funding for those books or just buying them myself. But I think that could be a PLF exercise that we could do as a department to, draft a list of potential modern resources, pitch it to our school division with explanations about what curriculum outcomes we're covering. I'm not picking these books because they're controversial, but in a way that's to diversify our book list. Like, not a lot on that 2004 list reflects the cultural diversity of our clubs. Like, what? There's not much on there, and like a lot of authors with some controversial issues that we probably shouldn't be promoting their content anymore. So that, I think that I miss kind of the freedom and the professional trust and flexibility that I got in ANZAC in Northland was very much like, we want students engaged, and if you can find a way to do that and tie it to curricular outcomes, do it. And then, not to say that Fort Mac Public has made me feel this way, but I feel a lot more pressure to just stand straight and narrow with the curriculum when I have this many students, because they feel like way more responsibility now for the I guess, like, progress and the academic output of like 127 students last semester. Like,
well, and it's a lot of pressure too, because though if you have 30, let's just say you have one grade 12 class of 37 students, that's 37 futures.
Yeah,
you are responsible for molding to one exam in 3 months.
In 3 months, yeah.
Okay, this was kind of when I first got into university, I like killed it. English 30-1, I upgraded it. And then
nice.
I got like a 95, probably should have got a 95. But then I read my first paper in university. I'm like, oh yeah, like Reformation in the US after the war, killed it. Jim Crow laws, peppered in each paragraph. I was like, oh man, we're pretty easy. 52%.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa! I sat down with my professor after. I was like, what just happened? Literally, last semester I was upgrading. I'm doing open studies now, trying to figure this out. And I remember Joe Anderson, the man from Mount Royal. I sit down with him. He's like, he looks me in the eye. I'm like, yeah, like, I want to be a social teacher. He's like, well, it never makes sense to me because all of these students come to university and they're absolute shit at writing. Like, they don't know what to do.
Oh, no.
And he said, I always wonder, like, what are they doing in school? And so my thing was, you know what? Maybe one day I'll have an answer to that question. It's because it's our expanded role as teachers is not just about how well can I make you write in 4 months. It's like you're the coach, you're the mental health support, you are in this extracurricular, you're in that extracurricular.
And the writing we're teaching is just limited. Like, where in the social and English curriculum is there a research paper?
Yes.
I had no idea how to do one of those until I got to university. And that, again, is not, I don't know what curriculum in Alberta is teaching students, okay, you're going to take this topic, go to the library, find 20 articles or books to prove your argument on this topic or to explore your ideas on this topic, and properly sourcing that and the different citation structures. In high school, for me, it was MLA. I get to university and one stream of my humanities was like Chicago style, and the other stream was like APA. Like, my master's a couple years ago was APA. I've never used APA. For Sensei, I got back as a graduate student who'd been through university, who'd been teaching for several years, teaching essay writing, and I got back just scathing review of not the content, of just like, you are not sourcing this correctly. What is wrong with you? Like, this is APA. There's a manual. Like, teaching, there's a manual. It's thick. Like, not. I totally sympathize with our college and university professors because we are teaching a very prescriptive one style of writing that I don't think they're going to see again in university. I can't think of where you're seeing a source analysis in university.
No. And like,
maybe a position paper.
Well, yeah, the position paper format.
I can't see where a personal response to text is coming.
Yeah, because you
in university.
I did a minor in English, and I'm trying to think. Well, they say personal response.
I will say the critical one. In my minor for English, that was the closest I've seen it, and it would be impossible, I think, for a provincial curriculum to try to teach a writing style that is going to hit all the different writing styles that exist in university, depending on your department. But and that would be a big task. Like, I'm sure there is a reason for these assignments. It's not to say that the people at the Department of Education are making me do something I don't think is useful.
Personal response, that'd be good.
I'm like, okay, yeah, if you're going to be in education, my gosh, do we do a lot of personal reflection journals? Sure, but I don't see where the PRT is showing up on a human geography paper about urban density in Bangladesh. Like, what? Like, I don't see that connection. But I feel for your professor because
because I was like, you know what, man,
we do so much other than just teaching.
Well, the thing also is that there's so much pressure from parents for high grades. Is that there is a certain degree of like, okay, I'll do what I can to help your child get their grade up, but really it doesn't actually accurately reflect what they're capable of. So if a parent is on you all the time to give extra work, to give grades up, when they go to university, then Joe's like, what the heck is going on here?
Extra work, that's a controversial. Extra credit blows my mind. I'm like, just do the assignment the first time? What do you mean extra credit? Extra credit means more work for me. If I give you extra, I have to give it that opportunity to every other student. That wouldn't be fair. But then I also do feel for the students that are at the finish line. They see that they need a little bump. That's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah. Well, and I think before we even get there, my question is...
Hello again, everyone. Just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this conversation, and hopefully you enjoyed the conversation just as much as I did. If there are any issues with professional conduct and or you would like to share your own story, experience, or something you would like to contribute to the show, please reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com or send a direct message on Instagram to @mrclark.afterdark. Hope you enjoyed, potentially found something of use, and of course, please do not forget to subscribe. See you next time, unless you're scared.